after learning the lessons of the Afghan disaster, and it is becoming a disaster because in past generations, wars in Afghanistan have broken and destroyed individual British Army regiments. They're one of the few people who've ever done it. Certainly when they've been outgunned by us, as they still are, they're a proud, brave, incredibly hard fighting people. And in the past they've broken British armies. They're now breaking the British Army. This war is becoming a disaster which could break the entire morale of the entire British Armed Forces, because they're so few, they're so overstretched, they're so abused, they're so badly treated. Morale is sinking, is crashing. It's almost gone. I've spoken to loads of lads who've been over there. Going back, coming back, some are still in the forces, some have left. And it's a catastrophe what's being done to our army over there. So much so that in my darker moments, I have to begin to wonder now, is this an accident? Because the long-term aim of the people who dragged us into the European Union, all of them, including the Tory party, the Labour Party and the Lib Dems, their long-term aim is Europe, one nation. And one nation has to have one flag. You've already seen that, the blue thing with the stars. It has to have one national anthem. They've already got that. Beethoven's Ode to Joy. It has to have one legal system. They're imposing that on us right now. It has to have one currency. They've imposed that on most of Europe. It's only a matter of time before they impose that here as well. It's got to have one set of measurements. They've done that with metres and kilos and so on. We're hanging on to the last vestiges of it. But it's got to have one other thing. It's got to have one army, one force. And they created a European army. It was parading up and down in Strasbourg the other week, just before Andrew and I got there, as they paraded these heavily modern stormtrooper type troops carrying their flag, their anthem, to celebrate the opening of their parliament. Andrew and I sat down during the Ode to Joy, their national anthem. If that had been the national anthem of any state, any nation state in the world, we'd have stood up silently and respected it. But for the national anthem of an institution which is aiming, which is working towards taking away and destroying not just the freedom of this country, but the very identity of this country, I think the least we could do was sit down, which is duly what we did. But how could they impose one European army on this country when our own army is still proud, basically undefeated, with an age-old tradition of pride and loyalty and commitment? How could they put that? How could they merge that into a European super army? Couldn't be done. But you break the British Army, you leave it an absolutely wrecked shell, and it wouldn't be so hard, would it? And when I see Labour MPs who've never risked anything of their own in their own lives, who've never even done a day's work because they've gone straight to university, to a research post for some older Labour sodomised MP, and then they've wormed their way to the top of the Labour Party, when I see them sending out our boys and then deliberately insulting them and their sacrifice, and refusing to open up military hospitals so that the ones who are injured are cared for by squaddies, cared for decently. When I see them saying they've got enough helicopters, when everyone who's ever been anywhere near Afghanistan has spoken to anyone who's been there, knows perfectly well that the reason we're taking so many casualties is that the Americans fly their boys in and out in 2 or 3 minutes flat, and they obliterate Johnny Taliban, whereas our poor sods have to walk there or go in lightly armoured vehicles which are going to be blown to pieces. Of those kind of insults that they daily offer our boys and girls, are they just an accident? Just stupidity? I think it's deliberate. I think it's deliberate. And at the same time as they're doing that, grinding the army down, they're not looking at ways to bring them home. They're looking at ways to get us into a war against Iran, which is, relatively speaking, by Muslim standards, a bit of a superpower. It's a serious military machine, is Iran, with millions and millions and millions of fanatics who belong to a sect of Islam, which is basically the world's greatest suicide cult. And they go picking a fight with them over how they run their elections. When is Tony Ward here tonight?
He's working now.
He's working. Tony from Liverpool had got an axe through the front, a claw hammer through the front of his head during the election, courtesy of a mob organised with taxpayers' money by the Labour Party. Well, that's not democracy, is it? If that injury had been carried out on the streets of Tehran and a Western cameraman had got those pictures, that would have been on the BBC, it would have been the front page of every serious newspaper in Britain, winding us up to get our boys involved to stop the Iranian government interfering with democracy and doing this to political dissidents. And you'd have to say it's wrong for them to do that to political dissidents, but it's up to them. And what's wrong is when that's done to political dissidents like Tony Ward in this country. That should be the problem that we're worried about, not using it as an excuse to drag us into a war in Iran, which is where these internationalist lunatics are after taking us next. And because we're here saying, no, we're not a pacifist party, we believe we should have a strong army. And if we were in power, we would use it and put our boys and girls in harm's way, because that's what they've signed up for, if it was in Britain's interest. If someone is directly attacking Britain or attacking absolute vital national interests of ours, then of course we would say the army must go and fight, the air force must go and fight, the navy, if we can find the ship, must go and fight, because that's what they sign up to do and that's why we pay them. But as nationalists, we would never, ever, ever send a single one of our troops into a war, a conflict that hasn't got something to do with Britain. And because we offer that difference, that's a key reason they hate us. And the more they get keen on getting us into more and more of these crazy foreign wars against the Muslim world, the more they know that our message is going to appeal to ordinary people who simply don't want any more of this and want our armed forces back here protecting Britain and minding our own business.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Griffin, MEP